Amanda, Deena, have you guys heard of the tale of the White Lady of Raven Rock?
No, but I want to.
I think I've heard about 12 different versions of that tale.
It's a story that's full of mystery, heartbreak, and maybe even murder. That's today on Folktown.
Breast milk science. It's a thing, and it's our thing. We're By Heart. Our mission is simple. Make the best infant formula in the world. We partnered with breast milk scientists, world-class doctors, and passionate parents to write a new recipe from scratch. And while we put a lot into By Heart, there's a long list of things you won't see on our ingredient list, like corn syrup, soy, or palm oil. Curious if By Heart is right for your baby? New customers can shop the starter pack and get 2 cans for the price of 1 at byheart.com/getstarted. This is a limited time offer. Additional terms and conditions apply. Just because breastfeeding is natural doesn't mean it's easy. But you don't have to do it alone. That's where the Lactation Network comes in. The Lactation Network helps parents at every stage of the breastfeeding journey. Whether you need support resolving feeding issues, choosing the right breast pump, creating a plan for weaning, or anything in between. The Lactation Network is the largest network of licensed breastfeeding experts in the country. They provide in-home, in-office, and telehealth consultations in all 50 states with no out-of-pocket cost. Get the breastfeeding care you deserve with the Lactation Network. Visit tln.care/podcast to schedule your own insurance-covered lactation consultation today.
This week on Folktown. Sleepy Hollow, a town that's anything but sleepy. Welcome to Folktown.
Chapter 1, Sleepy Hollow. Each season on Folktown, we're going to be uncovering the secrets of small towns. And then each episode is going to be a different tale. And this week we're covering the White Lady of Raven Rock. I'm Amanda, a creepy, spooky enthusiast.
I'm Dayelle. I also love all things spooky.
And I am Deena, and I'm someone who reads far too much and imagines way too many things that creepy and spooky things live in my brain rent-free.
Deena's actually going to be our resident Sleepy Hollow professional on this season. So we can get right into it. This season, we are going to be talking about not just the cemetery, but it's not just the legend of Sleepy Hollow, which I think is what everybody thinks of when they think of Sleepy Hollow, is just that overall Legend of Sleepy Hollow movie starring Johnny Depp, and everyone goes right there. But there is so much more to talk about with this town. So many more legends. And Dayelle, have you ever done like any tour of the town?
I have not. I actually have always wanted to do one of the tours, but I've never had the opportunity to do them. But I've always been obsessed with all of the, like you said, the movie, but there was also like a TV show called
on Fox.
Yes,
yeah,
that was a good one.
It was so good. I was obsessed with that when it came out, which just heightened my love for all that like small town lore and stuff.
Even though I'm pretty sure it was not even shot in Sleepy Hollow.
No.
Probably not.
I think it was filmed in Canada.
I feel like everything's filmed in Canada, but
God bless it.
I know. And the three of us all grew up not too far from Sleepy Hollow. So even though this is like a story that the whole country knows about, the whole world, we're not too far from it. And I remember in school, we took field trips to Tarrytown, and because there's a lot of historical components as well to the town of Tarrytown. So I didn't give a shit about any of that stuff. But as I got older and learned about all the spooky things, and the town really, really embraces, like, this is a real town, people. This is not a fake town created in Hollywood movies and TV and legends. Yeah. This is a real town. And Deena, do you want to give us a little bit of the history? Because you are our expert.
I just also have to add, growing up in Goshen, New York, which is such a small town in Orange County, which is 45 minutes from Westchester County. My mother hooked me on this story because she played me that Disney version of Legends of Sleepy Hollow, with like the cute horse that, kind of had a mind of its own. And they both got scared when they saw it,
I forgot about that.
It was my absolute favorite. I was obsessed with it and I was terrified. And one of my favorite parts was when like he thought he heard galloping hooves, right? And it was the willow hitting the tree trunk and him and the horse started laughing. And then all of a sudden the Headless Horseman comes out and they're both terrified and they start to run. And I just became so hooked with that. So when I got old enough to like realize that this place was literally 45 minutes away, I was just like, you're lying, So you really had to go and cross the Tappan Zee and go over there and see what was going on. And just not only do the people of the town embrace it, even the horseman is the mascot of the school, and I love that. If I could work there, I would just jump ship immediately and get over there.
Deena is a teacher, by the way, guys. You cannot tell by the fact she's got the facts in the true teacher way.
And, it's not, to be honest, like even just knowing the history of, the settlement of it all goes back to Washington Irving, right? All of these Dutch settlers came to settle this area. And, they say that we really can't even call it Sleepy Hollow because it didn't actually get deemed Sleepy Hollow until 1996. Before that
blows my mind.
Yeah.
That blows
because
my
we were
mind.
alive during that.
Yeah.
Before that, it was just considered North Tarrytown. Before that, it was Beekman Town because that was a very dominant family there that owned a lot of the land. But I mean, here come all these Dutch settlers onto Indian land, Native American land. And, I actually found out through all of my nerded out research because, I had to dive into that rabbit hole that the Indians that were there were in the Tapan, I believe it's pronounced, tribe, which was kind of like a branch off of the Mohicans. And Z is Dutch for sea.
Oh,
so look at that fun fact.
That's crazy.
Because you have to cross the Tappan Zee to get there.
For us, yeah, definitely.
For us, yes.
So yeah, and when Washington Irving was younger, he was originally born in New York City, and there was this yellow fever outbreak right prior to 1800, and his family was very worried about him, so they ship him off to Tarrytown, where his close personal friend James Kirk Paulding was living at the time, who is also a writer down the road. He just kind of falls in love with the area, and I think anyone who visits it, it's like, how could you not? It's gorgeous, whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter. Doesn't even matter.
It's crazy. Mm-hmm. For people who don't know who Washington Irving is, he is the author of...
Yes.
Oh, were you waiting for me? I didn't want to steal your... I didn't want to steal your thunder. I was like, drop the hammer, girl.
No. I was like, I don't know. Like, for anyone that doesn't know who we're talking about, this whole entire episode is all about it.
Yeah. Washington Irving, a.k.a. father of the American short story, to some. I mean, I'm sure people probably try and argue that, but many people believe he's the America's founding father of literature. And it's because of this story, which originally published in 1820 here in the United States, but also was popular in 1819 in England. I mean, it was well known. And that was so rare during that time that an American author was such a big to-do, overseas and here in the States.
Yeah, and don't worry, we will dive into that later. We'll give you
that's
all the
only
deets on our
story.
boy. Yeah, that's just one.
His story is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, we will get there. This episode is kind of about the spookiness, and we do kind of zero in on one story that we'll share with you guys later. But Tarrytown itself, if you don't know, it's on the eastern shore of the Hudson River, which is by where we all live, and it's. I don't want to say it when you drive in, it seems uppity, but it's not. It's just the buildings are so historic. They've really preserved a lot of the historical buildings. It's kind of one of those towns that you drive in, you're like, oh, there's history here. Mm-hmm. Like, that something happened there because the buildings look like they look.
They are over 200 years old, if not older. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
for
so
sure.
The Old Dutch Church in itself, which is the grounds that Ichabod Crane was trying to get to escape the Headless Horseman. was built in 1695. It's actually one of the oldest churches on record in New York State.
And is that in actual, like, is it in Sleepy Hollow?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We have to do a field trip.
Field trip.
We are spooky people, so you're going to hear a lot of tales on this show. That's kind of like the vibe that we are going for here. But when I thought of Tarrytown, or when I thought of Sleepy Hollow, I did not think any of this. Like, I knew the legend of Sleepy Hollow. I didn't know about the like deep history of this town. And Deena made us a really bomb-ass little document, so teacher of you, of,
Don't worry,
all of
kids.
the
I
history.
cited all of my evidence.
And like you said, this was a Native American settlement, like predominantly, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I tried to even write it phonetically so that I wouldn't mispronounce it. But the first residents of what eventually became known as Tarrytown were the Wet'suwet'en Indians. And I apologize if I butchered that. I try and speak slowly when I don't know how to pronounce words. But that's a tough one. That needs to be on a spelling bee, because that one's ish. But yeah, so they were a very friendly group, right? And they really helped the settlers get settled, right? And this is where really our first main story began to hatch, because when all of these different cultures are blending together in this area, everybody's got their own legends and lore, right? Everybody's got their own tales to tell and mysteries that, you know, are never going to be solved. And then they all kind of start blurring together as the years go by and morphing into something that's congealed.
Yeah, it's kind of like a rabbit hole. You find one story, which leads to another story, which leads to another. And it's just never ending. Like this town just has so many stories.
Yeah. And the best part about it is you can go visit almost every single one of these areas and kind of immerse yourself in it. If you put yourself in that vibe and think about all of the stories and the history, you can still picture it. Almost, you know, like, yes, obviously it's developed in the area and things like that, but there are still very amazing parts of this town and of this area that you really could imagine what it was like 200, 300 years ago. And I love that.
Yeah. And I don't think people realize, I truly did not realize until we had done that tour together, how many famous families lived in Sleepy Hollow, and so many authors. And it was like New York City adjacent, and especially around that time. You're right there. You're right by New York City. But so many, the Rockefellers have a huge impact, like you just said. And like, who are some of the other families?
Oh, they have Andrew Carnegie at the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery.
No money at all in that family.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, back to the Rockefellers, you know, William Rockefeller's mausoleum is there. And because of General Motors being developed in the Tarrytown area in the early 1900s, I mean, that really helped put that area as well on the map.
Yeah. And I mean, when you go there, you're like, oh, I can see the old money everywhere, like oozing through those buildings.
Sure can.
And what's the name of the house in town as well?
The house? What, like Phillipsburg Manor?
Yes, that's what it is. Phillipsburg Manor.
So, and that is actually a place that I have not gotten to see myself yet. I mean, literally have driven past it so many times, but haven't been able to find the time yet to go walk the grounds. But I mean, it's because of Frederick Phillips, who, again, this Dutch settler that started buying all these parcels of land that wound up being this lower Westchester area, that the Old Dutch Church was even built, thanks to his wife, who had the idea, his first wife, I should say. And again, like, really weird fact here, and maybe we should move away from fun facts and go to like weird, odd facts or whatever. I have not been able to figure out, and I haven't found any research as to where his first wife is buried, but Frederick Phillips and his second wife are buried in the crypt of the Old Dutch Church. So I don't know what happened to Mrs. First Timer over there.
Ooh, girl.
But it was her idea, and I like to tell everyone that because I'm like, let's give her credit, please. Okay?
Yeah. That's interesting. So listeners, if you know the story of where she's buried, do tell.
Or what happened to her.
Yeah, we want to know.
She's probably under the church. So, I mean, like, history aside, you know when you go somewhere and you're like, oh, this feels haunted? That town feels haunted.
Someone's watching me.
Yeah, it feels like you get that vibe for sure. And I mean, one of the most popular stories that we're going to talk about today, and we're gonna tell you in a little bit, is the Lady of Raven Rock. And that is, if you just want to touch on what that, did you talk about that at all in your tours? Is that something that
I do not? No, I do not. Okay. Because Raven Rock, again, a real place that you can go and visit, is on the Rockefeller estate. So and again, very close to Phillipsburg Manor, over the transition of the land, the Rockefellers built Kaikut, which is their mansion. And it's from what I've read, it is a very hard place to find Raven Rock. Like it will take you about an hour to find it. And God bless, some online bloggers that recorded and documented. And I mean, in detail, pictures, topographical maps, like they want you to go find this area. And I'm with it, because when we do take our field trip there, I think we're going to have to put in some good solid hiking to go see this place. It's on the Rockefeller State Park Preserve. But it's almost like a detached part. You have to kind of take the road less traveled to find it. And I think that probably transitions really well into why there are so many different possible white ladies of Raven Rock, because I don't think just one person got lost around that area.
No,
I mean, you guys might have to put one of those baby things on me to keep me tethered to you, like, so I don't go missing when we go. I tend to wander.
Dayelle, when you did a lot of research on the story of the Lady of Raven Rock, right, for this episode?
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is there's a lot of stories that kind of they all kind of intertwine with each other. So there's so many different versions of the story out there. And the story that we will tell in a little bit is a unique story in itself. But what's crazy is that there are so many bits and pieces from a lot of the local lore that I think we'll dive into after we hear the story. But one of the crazy things is there's a ton of, and Deena, I feel like you probably know more about this stuff, but there were a ton of, well, I guess 2 murders that took place right by the rock. There was like a boy that was found by Raven Rock. And from that, there was a lot of lore that kind of like went around there, but there was never, I believe it was the owner of a farm, and he was arrested for killing one of his workers. And then there was another story where they didn't find a body, but the lore was that there were hauntings around the rock. So I think there's just like so many different stories around that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I know. And I almost don't want to debunk any of them, but I'm going to have to be like, nope, that one, nope, couldn't have happened.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is I think there's a lot of, and you're the history person with all this stuff.
You guys are giving me way too much credit here. I just read a lot. Do I retain the information? Yeah, sometimes. I think it definitely is. It's a great way to start our little segment, because I mean, that really sparks the interest in people, right? You hear this, I hear this. Let's go see it and try and figure out which one could have been true. I like to believe that this white lady and this area, I can see it happening. And that is why I love this idea of a ghost that haunts this area, because I don't believe that how about this? I don't believe that all spirits are evil. Because they're not, right? And I think that this story is not something to scare someone. This spirit, whoever she might be, is there to warn people, to keep them safe. And I love that view of the story.
Me too.
More than watch out, someone's going to kill you. We love those ghost stories. We love those kind of stories. But, it's kind of nice to be able to visit an area and just think someone is looking out for you.
Yeah. Especially because you said it's like in the middle of nowhere.
It is, yeah. And
I like to be scared, though.
I mean, I still would be scared if she popped out and was like, watch out. I'd be like, and run away. But but at least she'd be looking out for me. She'd have good intentions,
Yes, that's fair.
That's true.
That's fair.
That's true.
And I think maybe that's why, because we're all kind of similar in that thing. I love when you meet people and they're like, I don't believe in ghosts. Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't believe in like the ghost hunting shows where it's all fake and they're just like, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I believe in it. Do you guys?
Oh, without a doubt. 100%.
Okay.
You can't tell
Dayelle,
me.
You too?
Yes.
No. Yeah. You can't tell me that there aren't ways to communicate with
I don't think you can
the
be
other side
into this stuff as much as we are without believing there's something more out there.
Okay. So that's good that we established baseline. So if you don't, maybe by the end of this podcast, we'll convince you to. And if you haven't visited Sleepy Hollow, highly recommend it because it is, first of all, beautiful, aesthetically beautiful. But this time of year, why do you guys think this podcast is coming out in October? It is spooky season, bitches. It leans into Halloween so freaking hard. It is, the whole town is decked out, and there is definitely a feeling that things have gone on there. Mm-hmm. And maybe there's places in the world where spirits just feel like chill, like, hey, yeah, we can hang here. Everybody's cool with it. So if we want to hang out.
And you had mentioned this a little bit earlier, in terms of its location, 25 miles north of New York City. So to think back hundreds of years of when people were first kind of emigrating over here, think of all the different cultures that were coming here and the things that could have happened, that really started all of this.
It's so true. It's a train stop too, which is super fun. Mm-hmm. Like Tarrytown is a stop on the train, so it's easy to get to, which is great.
Sure is, yeah.
So we're going to take a short break, and when we get back, we are going to tell you the tale of the White Lady of Raven Rock.
Breast milk science. It's a thing, and it's our thing. We're By Heart. Our mission is simple. Make the best infant formula in the world. We partnered with breast milk scientists, world-class doctors, and passionate parents to write a new recipe from scratch. And while we put a lot into By Heart, there's a long list of things you won't see on our ingredient list, like corn syrup, soy, or palm oil. Curious if By Heart is right for your baby? New customers can shop the starter pack and get 2 cans for the price of 1 at byheart.com/getstarted. This is a limited time offer. Additional terms and conditions apply.
All right, guys, welcome back. Dayelle has a little fact to share with us before we get ready. Go ahead,
yeah,
Dayelle.
this is super random, but kind of interesting. So in the story, in an article, I should say, they talk about how where Raven Rock is located, there are no ravens or crows to be found. Mm-hmm. And they don't know why.
Oh, boy.
I did read that myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's fascinating.
Right. I mean, could it be irony? Could it be tied into something? But
I don't know.
I mean, I also think, this is me being forever the skeptic and maybe somewhat judgy. I don't know. But you know how many people confuse ravens and crows? Like, what if someone was just like seeing, a murder of crows and was like, well, Crow Rock doesn't sound fun.
Does not.
So, Raven Rock. Ooh, I like the alliteration. Let's stick with that. And then everyone was like, well, where are the ravens? And oh my God, they're not there. I don't know. That's just what I made up in my head.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Dayelle, lead us into our spooky story.
It's time, dear listener. Cozy up. Get ready to hear the tale of the White Lady of Raven Rock.
In the heart of Sleepy Hollow, where ghostly tales and legends thrive, there exists a story that has haunted the town for centuries. The tale of the White Lady of Raven Rock. Late one October evening, with winter's chill beginning to take hold, a young man named Samuel walked the outskirts of the village. He approached Raven Rock, a shadowy towering cliff that looms over Sleepy Hollow like a dark sentinel. Instead of avoiding it, as most villagers did, Samuel decided to venture closer. Legend whispered that the cliff held a tragic tale. Many years prior, a young woman named Eliza, devastated by the loss of her lover at sea, had thrown herself from its peak. Since her untimely death, on nights when the moon was at its brightest, a spectral figure in white was said to wander near the rock, forever seeking her lost love. On this particular night, Samuel, who was more curious than superstitious, noticed an ethereal glow at the summit of Raven Rock. Compelled by an unknown force, he began to ascend. As he neared the top, under the silvery glow of the moon, he saw her. A woman in a flowing white gown, with skin so pale it seemed to absorb the moonlight. She was at the very edge of the cliff, singing a melancholic tune, her voice echoing with heartbreak. Just as she seemed to drift closer to the edge, Samuel, his heart pounding, called out to her. She turned slowly, her eyes deep pools of sorrow. Their eyes met, and in that silent exchange, Samuel felt the weight of her endless despair. It was then he realized a locket he had found as a child, a small silver heart with the initials E and J placed on a delicate chain, must belong to her. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out his handkerchief, unfolding it, revealing the locket. As if she had been searching for that very thing, the woman Eliza paused and floated to him. Samuel reached out his hand, placing the locket into her ivory hand. As if she bathed in the moon's embrace, Eliza began to fade, her form merging with the silvery light until she was no more. Samuel stood alone on Raven Rock, the haunting melody of the White Lady still echoing in his ears. He descended the cliff, a mix of relief and melancholy filling him. He felt he had witnessed the final lament of the White Lady of Raven Rock. From that night on, the village never spoke of sightings of the White Lady again. Some believed she had reunited with her lover in another realm, while others thought she was still searching just beyond their sight. One thing is certain. Sleepy Hollow holds many mysteries, and Raven Rock is but one of its haunting tales. So, dear listener, the next time you find yourself wandering on a moonlit night, remember the tale of the White Lady and tread carefully.
I'll just jump right in and start us off with, that was such a wonderful story about this woman in white, right? Which has started off so many different stories, in so many different cultures dating back all the way. You can find this being mentioned even back in like King Arthur times, talking about Camelot and things like that. And was it a witch? Is it a ghost? What are we blaming this woman for now? It's kind of one of those things. And this, woman in white kind of ties in so well with Raven Rock's lore in itself. Because here we have, again, another woman in white. So which story do we want to start telling?
I mean, there's definitely a romantic element to it, which I love. And I know that that's not the only version of the woman in white, the haunting of Raven Rock. But I love that there's a feeling when you're in the woods, right? Mm. Even when it's daytime and you're in the woods by yourself, or even if you're with someone else, there is always this ominous feeling. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this one, like you had mentioned before, Deena, like you had said, Dayelle, it's not scary. Like if I had seen this version of this ghost, I'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Right. You poor thing.
Yeah, she's just filled with sorrow. So it's almost like you see her and just feel for her.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, not fear, just wanting to understand what happened almost. I want to know the story, the full story.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is one of the biggest ghost lore stories of Sleepy Hollow and Tarrytown in that area. And what are some of the other versions of this that you found, Dayelle?
So one of them was the story of the Bronze Lady. It was another woman, completely different, doesn't take place at Raven Rock, but there was a lot of similarities, and I think a lot of things that were pulled from probably that lore, as well as stories from Raven Rock. And I think like Deena knows those stories better, but I think, like, for example, there was one in an article, there's a story, it's titled Shocking Murder at Buttermilk Hill. They found a body by Raven Rock, and that's kind of where one of the, I think, original stories started. So they said that they discovered a skeleton in the woods. It was lying with one leg tucked
that's great.
in under its torso.
Fantastic.
And another wedged against a tree. It's from June 21st, 1927. And it was a few schoolboys exploring around Buttermilk Hill. But they were found in the woods close to Raven Rock. And I think a lot of lore kind of stemmed from that story as well. Just a really traumatic. But what's interesting about it is there's no information about these two killings. So whether or not it's true or if it happened, you can't find anything on it. Just this one article that talks about it. And they even put in there that they can't find any information on it, which is kind of interesting in itself.
Who said they were killed?
Well, exactly. So like what? Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I think that's where so much lore comes from. You don't really know if the story, there's a part of it that's based in fact, I would assume, like something happens to start that.
Mm-hmm. I had heard this story as like the lady, I don't know if you guys heard this version, but she was wandering in the winter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she got lost in a snowstorm, and like you can still hear her screaming on like big winter nights when the wind is whistling.
She like hid by the rock to get away from the wind and the snow, and then was never seen again.
That's a great part for me to interject because as a teacher, I like to make sure that I have the facts, but there are several stories, and we can bring it all the way back. Sleepy Hollow's official village historian, Henry Steiner, has wrote about this quite often, and I'd like to, think he knows what he's talking about. And I actually have one of his books. Shocking, I know. But, if we go all the way back to how I said Native American culture in this time, that's really where we saw the first tie to Raven Rock, that there was this beautiful woman and this man, of course, another person from another tribe.
Of course. It's always a fucking man.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to start all the stories.
Coming in.
He wanted him for herself. She didn't want him. He got jealous, so he started to pursue her. She was running away. And then this is honestly the only mention of ravens that I've ever heard. She decides to, pray to the spirits to help her get away. And I believe she jumps off of the cliff area and becomes a raven.
I like that one best.
Yes.
Interesting.
Now, and obviously, you know, we can hear that and automatically think like, ooh, you know, this is a great area to go, you know, start this story, because then you have all the settlers come in, right? And then you have the one that you just said, where the most I've read about has been with this inclement weather of snow, which, hello, we're all New Yorkers. We know exactly the way that stuff rolls. And that, yeah, this woman, she was out gathering firewood, and kind of the storm snuck up on her, and she sought shelter, and the only thing she could find was, you know, the Raven Rock, which is a huge, massive rock, by the way. You know, I definitely encourage everyone to, you know, Google and look up some pictures.
Big.
It's yeah.
I just looked at it before we started the episode, and I was like, I'm thinking this is going to be like, all right, guys, have you ever seen fucking Plymouth Rock in person?
Mm-hmm.
It is the most disappointing thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I've heard that.
It is so small. I'm like, are we for serious?
Yeah.
Like, is this? But Raven Rock, it's like massive.
Yeah.
It looks like a piece of the cliff, just like the cliff eroded away and just have a chunk of cliff there, which I can totally see how someone would hide behind that to, you know, get away from the snow. So I get that. And it also looks like a place that if kids were being hunted and someone was after them in the woods and something malevolent was happening, they could have hid there, because it's huge. Like standing up, you cannot be seen,
and it might have blocked some of the storm from hitting this woman. But I mean, still freezing temperatures, things like that, and the snowdrift that would occur against that rock. You definitely can see how somebody could be lost to the storm at that time, and, you know, disappear until the snow melts, and then you find this body, unfortunately, of this woman, where people start to manifest different reasons why she could have been there. I will say, though, my favorite story that I've heard is a love story, and it's a sad one. And it still has me very angry at the guy in the story. So, I mean, I think we can all attest that every single version of this, we just really don't like the men in these stories. You know, like,
it's sounding like that.
They're all kind of jerks. And we're like, what was going on back there, guys?
Yeah. I also, just to jump back to the woman who hides behind the rock for the snowstorm, I actually found the little blurb of the story. I can read it real quick. It is, so it's from the Chronicles of Tarrytown in Sleepy Hollow, and it goes, a woman, so we have read, wandered out of the path of a blinding snowstorm and sought shelter from the blast of wind in the ravine behind Raven Rock. The snow drifted in upon her, and she went to sleep, never to awaken again. Ever since, that cleft has been a place of refuge, for it is said that the spirit of the poor wayfarer meets the belated wanderer with cries that sound like the screaming of the wind and gestures that remind one of the sweep of snowdrifts, warning others away from the spot that she was found so fatal, which is kind of crazy.
Ooh, that's creepy. And you know, like, I like I mean, all versions of the story, like we had said in the beginning, like, there's always a lady in white, and maybe it's just because the storyteller that just did that incredible story makes me feel like goosebumpy and freaked out. But there's something to be said about, like, you know, if both versions, I mean, there could be multiple women
without a doubt.
Raven Rock that could just be a place of refuge that they go to be ghosts.
Yeah,
but there is a definite freakiness to. If you've never lived in an area during a snowstorm, when the wind is howling like through leafless trees, there's no leaves on the trees at this point, so just blowing through these branches, it sounds like somebody's screaming.
Yeah, absolutely.
And could you imagine being in the woods, hearing that, and then also hearing what you think is a woman's scream and not being able to differentiate the two? Would shit my pants.
Terrifying.
Shit in my pantaloons.
Terrifying.
And I think before I depress you all with the sad love story, I think we can all attest that anything we've ever probably read about, watched about when it comes to ghosts is there has to be some form of trauma, right?
Yeah.
There has to be
Yes.
something that would keep the spirit in this area because they can't rest, right? So some of the other possibilities that I've found, and I'll just hit you with the bullet points here, but and again, I don't know if they're true. They kind of seem more fictitious to me as something that could have adapted in the closer time period that we're in right now, but because they deal with car accidents, and that one of the women whose alleged name might have been Mary died on the Sleepy Hollow Road, which ironically meets Mount Misery Road. I mean,
That's fantastic.
I mean, you're putting these
great.
things out there. I'm just saying. But she died on the road after being pushed out of the car by her boyfriend. And then some people say she jumped out of the car and died as a result of injury. And that's why, some people say as they're driving down this road, they see this white figure and they drive through it. And I mean, that's stuff that
That's
horror
my
movies
fear.
are made of. Yeah.
That's my fear.
Some people think it could have been a teenager who was hit by a car. I think the creepiest one, again, because I don't know if I really find the story that I like creepy, but the creepy one that I heard was that this woman was a patient at a hospital that used to be located near the
love
road.
it.
Yeah.
Hospitals.
And this was like mid 1800s, that the hospital mysteriously burned down and trapped people inside. And allegedly she might have been the one that burned down the hospital. Like she torched the place herself. Yeah.
Okay.
And people claim to see, like the specter and hear the cries of those who were tragically lost.
I like
But
that one.
ironically, the name is always Mary. I don't know why.
Interesting.
Poor Mary.
There's some witch ties in here too, that she could be a ghost of a woman who was hung on the side of the road during the witch hunts, because we might not be Salem, but I'd say we are the next closest thing.
Agreed. So tell us the depressing love story that'll make us all cry into our pillows.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, I'm
pumped.
ready.
I have this wonderful book called Legends and Lore of Sleepy Hollow and the Hudson Valley by Jonathan Crooks, who is extremely popular, especially this time of year, because he does really great storytelling live and in person. I have not myself been able to get over to see him in person yet, but I have watched him on YouTube and am begging him to come do a performance. And in his book, where he talks about all these different versions of the White Lady of Raven Rock, he brings it back to the American Revolution, which Westchester is deep in the Revolution, which is also how we kind of hear about the possibility of a Hessian who loses his head during the Battle of White Plains. That battle is brought up again here because British soldiers would, what's the word, when they would stay with local areas, they would
Being put up by like the families. No,
like they would quarter with local families. And one of the British soldiers that walked into this woman's house, they fall in love. And I was like, oh, yay, happy story, because I was so nervous for her, as these British officers are like, what? Like, hey, we're going to stay here, lady, take off my boots, And the two of them fall in love. But of course, he has to finish his service. So he takes her up to Raven Rock. He proposes to her and he says, once my service is over, I will meet you here in a year. You can see the Hudson River from here, and you could see that I'll be sailing back to you. You'll see my white sail, right?
The key there.
Yeah.
Aha.
And she makes her wedding dress during this time. Again, a white dress. And during that time, she gets there on that day. She waits for him and waits for him and waits for him, and he doesn't come back. And she winds up dying up there. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I could have called that. Had an inkling that might happen.
Well, but you had mentioned the sound of this wailing, screaming woman in the woods, right?
Yeah.
And this says that she called, my beloved, is that you? Have you come for me? Because she keeps seeing things and hoping that it's him. And she winds up sitting there. And again, this snowstorm comes through. And this poor woman dies of frostbite and blistered bloody lips. And the snow just piles on top of her. And they find her in the spring. And that's how the story ends. And I'm like, excuse me, homeboy.
That's
what happened to you?
horrific.
That's very tragic.
Right? Like, did he not come back?
What happened with this guy? Is he dead? He better be dead.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know.
That's crazy.
But she's still looking for him. And so, the wailing that we hear is her crying,
looking
still
for him.
looking for him.
Like she's wandering the woods,
Yeah.
standing on Raven Rock looking for him.
It reminds me of an episode of, Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Ooh.
Oh, I loved that show.
I did too. They need
The
to bring
stories were
that
never.
back.
They were never scary to me though. They were.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? I was
I
terrified.
loved them.
I did not think they were scary. Deena, you were also scared of
Don't say it.
the Goonies.
Yeah, I knew you
were
were
scared of the
I
Goonies.
was. Sloth was terrifying as a child of a small age that did not understand what was going on.
happening.
Yeah.
I could see that. I could see that,
very sc-
definitely.
My
And the
mom used
way
to
he's-
always tell me that he was nice.
The
but-
way he's introduced
Yes!
to is very scary.
and
yeah.
chained
For,
up
like,
in that room? Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end when he pulls off the Superman outfit, I mean, that's not
he's supposed to be very lovable, but he definitely is
terrifying
introduced
for
in
a 4-year-old.
in a creepy way.
I was 4.
I loved him.
I might have been older than 4, but I don't
him.
know.
I wanted to take him home.
Rocky
So
Road?
I know. See, how could you not? But I think that I love that we started with this story because it is spooky and there's so many different versions of the story that none of them are less creepy than the other. Some of them more depressing. Thank you, Deena. But
Sorrow filled.
yeah, they're all so sad.
Yeah,
they are.
Like any of them are so sad. And I feel like, the whole point of this podcast is each season we're going to uncover the creepy stories of small towns because, Sleepy Hollow is just one creepy town that happens to be close to us, one that we can physically go see and have been part of and been able to feel that creepiness. But I feel like this is a really good place to start
And
our spooky
that is
adventure.
such a good thing because I have a question for both of you.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm ready.
Me
Ooh,
too.
I like this.
What would you do if you were driving down one of these roads and you saw a white-ish figure?
Follow them.
Because think about it, there's no streetlights in these back roads. Like we all know that too well, right? But then you see something illuminated that looks like a human randomly walking around glowing white. What would you do?
I would follow.
You're a liar.
I would follow
it.
too. I would follow
it.
because I would think
I'd
that
be
they were
very
trying to get my help.
curious. Yeah.
I feel like they would be trying to get my help
I would just
to
want
do
to know
something.
what it is.
I guess I'm just
Yeah.
like a true New Yorker and I would mind my business and accelerate on the gas and be like, nope, they're fine.
I used to house sit for neighbors that lived up the road from me, and at night I'd walk home, and it's
First of all, what?
Yeah.
You live in the middle of fucking nowhere, and I can say that as the person who lives in the middle of nowhere where you grow up.
But it was two different places I lived, right? I lived in one house that actually was on the border of like park land. And so it was.
That's how you die. That's how you die.
It's in the middle of nowhere. But my grandparents lived down the driveway, which was a really long driveway. And I would go from their house to my house or from my house to their house. And at night, and there weren't any lights. And so I grew up doing that. So I was never afraid of being out in the dark. I just would talk to myself.
I'm just
so
afraid
I
of the dark.
wouldn't be afraid. But what's funny about that is like when you are in the dark, when there's literally no lights, because there's no lights in the country.
That's a different kind of dark.
It's a different kind of dark. And like if you let yourself get into your own head, you freak yourself out. Like I would run home because I would be like, I definitely heard something.
Mm-hmm.
That was a sound. That was a tree branch cracking. And most likely it was a bear or a deer.
I think that's equally terrifying.
Like exactly. But I used to do it all the time. And I think like that kind of I loved that. I actually really enjoyed walking home alone in the pitch
I do like
black. And like literally the only light are the moon and stars. And like you just kind of let your head, play tricks on you a little bit. And it's great. I love it.
So what you're saying is we are going to camp out at the Raven Rock.
Yes.
Deena will shit her pants and leave.
No, I won't. I'll stay, but I'm not. I'm going to be the most quiet you've ever heard me in my life.
See, I think too, like I'm the type of person that really enjoys, like I love scary movies. I love scary shows. I love all that kind of stuff. I'm not a huge fan of like haunted houses because I don't like not being able to get myself out of it. So if I'm like watching a scary movie and I'm like, nope, I can just turn it off. But if you're doing like those haunted hay rides or whatever, where like people will grab you, or you go to Six Flags and you walk around for Fright Night and the people come after you, like I don't like those. They like make me feel like I'm going to die.
I have the best story for you then. Are you ready?
Yes.
You want to talk about shitting your pants? Like she wouldn't have survived this. So I was on a blind date with a friend and her boyfriend. They set me up with a friend and we went to Newburgh.
It was not me.
No, it was not you.
I did not do this.
No. Are you guys familiar with the Terror Dome in Newburgh? This was a million years ago. But so yeah, I had a friend and her boyfriend that wanted to set me up with one of his friends. What better double date than go to a haunted house with someone, right? I mean, it just spells lasting relationship. Never saw him again after that, by the way. But so we get there and the way they set this haunted house up was wonderful. It was like multiple houses, but you were on a path. So you kept going from one to the other to the other. I loved it. Like I'm very, very organized like that. So it worked well with my brain. But there's this like Grim Reaper creepy guy that introduces everything and kind of explains the rules and blah, blah, blah. Of course, the guy I'm there with used to be in the Navy. And he has to be this like macho guy, like, oh, I'll lead the way, you know? And so these guys like, you know, they got to target him. And who's next to him? Oh, right, the blonde. Like this was like spelling horror, right? So we wind up going into this one house and homeboy Grim Reaper must have told his friends who we are because we get into this room that's pitch black. And like I said, Dayelle, when you were talking, I truly am like, I may have two fears, the dark and water. I hate them both, okay? And it's that kind of dark. You cannot see your hand in front of your face, but you have to kind of put your hands out because the walls are narrowing and you're like kind of moving around. I am not lying to you. All of a sudden we hear Navy boy. And I'm like, get me out of here right now, you know, like, and we finally like see the light at the end of the tunnel and I take off for it. Mind you, my friend's boyfriend is like this 350-pound line biker. And I like knock him out of the way because I'm like, yo, I got to go. And as we get to the end, I'm not lying, this like creepy voice trails after us. We'll find you, Navy boy. And I was like, you had to piss them off. You had to act macho. I'm not with him, you know.
Just run.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I took off, like burst out the door. People were waiting in line. Were like, oh my God, like what happened in there? You know, that is the whole thing.
So what if you saw the Lady of Raven Rock in one of the...
I'd be gone. I wouldn't, I mean...
I'm such a creep. I think I would be, like you asked the question before, I would be like Dayelle and I would follow it. Like I want to know. I want to talk to you. I want you to tell me everything.
I think you'd have to calm me down first.
I don't know that I would talk to it. I would just follow it and then watch. I could see you, Amanda, talking to you.
I could totally see Amanda talking to her.
I would be talking
I
to
would
her.
like hide behind
Hey,
a tree
girl!
and
Like,
watch.
why are you crying? Yeah. Do you need a friend? And then
Do you want my money?
Amanda would be best friends with this ghost in minutes.
And then she turns around and she has no face.
Yeah. Like the
And
like
then
the
I'm like,
gift that I
oh, you're cute. Somebody loves you.
I'm sure he's coming. Just wait a little bit longer.
Yeah, you just have to wait a little longer. I'd be like, are you the heartbroken one, the snow one?
Yeah, right.
Are you the murdered kid?
Were
you just got to tell me which one you are.
Yeah,
tell me how to help.
Were you thrown out of the car? What happened there?
Yeah.
Tell me.
Did you fall?
Be like,
Did someone
what's his
push
name?
you?
What's his name?
What's his name? Yeah, that
Who
would be
did
it.
I'll find him, girl.
Amanda would be like the girl in the bathroom at the club that would be like, why are you crying, sis? I got your back.
Yep.
Who do I need to hit?
Yeah.
I'm going to find him.
Mm-hmm. I will find
Exactly.
him.
And I will be sorry.
She has a certain set of skills.
It's like, oh, it was 1600? I'll find his ancestors. Don't worry.
Absolutely.
One of them has to suck. So, okay. I love that story. I love that. And I think that was a perfect story to kick off our first episode.
And also how awesome small towns are, right?
Yeah, they're the best. And there's so many creepy stories in small towns. And so this is just one we have 3 more episodes for you guys.
Small towns with big stories.
Yes,
Love that.
absolutely. I love that. So this week we covered the White Lady, and next week we are going to be talking about probably my favorite thing to talk about, especially in the month of October, the Witches of Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
And there are quite a few.
Quite a few, and we're really excited for that one. And the story is so crazy that we're going to tell you next week. And just to point out, that was not our voice telling the story yet. So tune in next week. And if you haven't, head over to our social media. We are Folktown Podcast. We want to hear all of your creepy stories. If you've ever been to Tarrytown or been in the cemetery, or you have any theories about this, we need to hear them. We want to hear everything. And maybe if you send us some good ones, we'll read some on here.
Ooh, I'd love that.
Yes.
Yeah, so we love ghost stories. So send us what you've got, people. We will see you guys next week.
Bye.
Cheers.